So we decided to start off this show. We're going to do 2025 hypotheticals. So we're going to give like some stat lines, some predictions, not necessarily predictions, but like if this happens, how does it affect the team around it? So like our example that we'll start off here with DJ Lagway. What if DJ Lagway throws for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns? I mean, I think that's a bit ridiculous. Like, I don't think he's going to throw for that. I mean, if he's throwing for that, again, what do we think could happen? I mean, we're probably talking about being easily a playoff team.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if we weren't at that point unless the defense just collapsed. Is that enough to get to New York?
Very possible.
His rushing numbers as well are going to be really high probably. And if again, we said we're probably getting to the playoffs if he's throwing for those numbers. So you're winning a lot of primetime games. You have good numbers. Say he also has like 500 rushing yards. Then I think you're definitely looking at Lagway in New York and us as one of the premier teams in college football. But so how we're going to do this, we each have came up with our own. I have a negative on offense. He has a positive. I have a positive on defense. He has a negative. We'll start off with a positive on offense.
Yeah. So looking at this offense, like I think we've both talked about it a ton. We're really high on the running game. And so I think, we're talking about, we kind of wanted to go for the extremes with these, but I don't think this is kind of a twofold thing. And I don't think this first part's that extreme, but what if Florida has the leading rushing offense in the SEC? Do you think that's like an absurd, given the way Billy wants to play, given the offensive line, given the depth at the running back spot? They were kind of middle of the road last year, but it felt like the rushing game like really came on kind of in the back half of the year to me.
Yeah, I mean, we were the only team to have a rusher go for over 100 yards against Ole Miss, like maybe the best defensive line in college football. I don't think it's absurd. I think you look at who else is going to be contending for that. My immediate thought goes to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Because I don't really trust Marcel Reed through the air, but we know how much of a dual threat QB he is. Like, he's definitely a tier above Lagway when it comes to their running ability. So I don't think it's crazy because, like, what if, I mean, I don't want to project injuries on a player, but like if Reed gets hurt and Texas A&M has to go to Jacob Zeno, their backup, like Zeno is not a mobile threat. Like Lagway is a way better mobile threat than a Zeno would be. And if teams are in the box and trying to have Zeno beat them, that's definitely going to hurt their run game. But I think it'll be really fun to see us lead the country in rushing because I mean we have such fun and explosive running backs.
By the way. I was just saying.
Oh, yeah, the SEC. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. The SEC. So, I mean, what are Lagway's numbers in this? Like, is Lagway just not able to throw the ball? Or
so that was the second half of this. So I was thinking about because I think that alone would be really nice, but I don't think that's really any guarantee of this being like an elite offense. They could have a lot of problems even if it's that effective of a rushing game. So where I went with this, because I think like a 4,000 yard, 35 touchdown season for Lagway is probably not that likely, especially if the running game is that good. But what I went with is what if that happens? You have the leading rushing attack in the SEC. And what if Lagway averages 10 yards per attempt? That's what he finished last season averaging, right at 10 yards an attempt. And it wasn't, was it skewed by the Samford game? Like, I'm sure, but he still finished with a pretty decent sample size, throwing almost 200 passing attempts. Only one qualifying passer in the SEC had more than 10, I believe, last year. It was Jackson Dart. So I guess I'm not even saying what if the passing offense is incredibly prolific, but what if you balance an elite running game with a passing offense that is both explosive and efficient?
Absolutely. So I think the only really place I can go with the negative for the offense, because I mean, I feel like at worst, this offensive line is going to be good. I mean, it's just too experienced. Like, unless we're including injuries, which I'm just not going to do here, then you can say, oh, what if Jake Slaughter gets injured? Or what if Barber gets injured? So I'm just not going to do that. So I think the only real place I can go here is that wide receiver room. What if that wide receiver room just can't develop? I mean, J. Michael Sturdivant, like he had 800 yards in that one season at Cal, but then at UCLA has 300 yards last season, 400 yards. Can't remember off the top of my head. So what if he just was underwhelming at UCLA?
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, well, Trey, maybe he's not able to pick up steam from his injury last year. Maybe he's just a gimmick of the offense. Like we've seen a lot of him in the first 2 years. And then, hey, Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown, they just aren't ready yet. It's like, what if the receiving room just isn't ready? Like it's talented, but they aren't
Mhm.
ready to take that step right away. I think that's the best spot you can go here for a negative.
Yeah, that's a really good one because I think we're pretty high on the receiver room. But yeah, I think there is a lot of projection going on. There's a lot of projection in that Sturdivant is going to be more like the player he was earlier in his career than the one he kind of was in 2024. And I think that like if he is not at that level, and then all of a sudden you're putting a lot on, like you said, Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown, and I don't think it's fair to necessarily expect, even though we both kind of think Dallas Wilson's going to have an impactful freshman season, you can't put that on him. And then all of a sudden you've got like kind of a gadget player in Trey Wilson, and a serviceable but not really overwhelming talent in Khalil Jackson. So like at that point, yeah, I think that is a big question for the passing game. And I mean, that would be really frustrating if you have this Heisman level talent in DJ Lagway, but the passing game never really manifests because you just don't have the consistency and the guys at receiver, frankly.
Yeah, so yesterday someone asked me, what are my yard projections for a receiving room? And I got something that would probably be on the higher end of good, like not Lagway throwing 4,000 yards. So it would be under that, but like I had J. Michael Sturdivant about 800 yards, which is more than what Badger and DK went for. They were in the 700s. I had Trey going for 750, but I also include Trey getting a couple hundred yards on the grounds on like sweeps and stuff. Dallas Wilson going for like 500, Ada Mizell 450, and Vernell Brown the third going for like 300. Like, what if you just split those? Like JMS is at like 500, and Trey, is down to like 400, and Dallas is at 300, and Mizell is like 200. Vernell Brown's like 100. Like, if you're splitting those like nearly in half, which is a possible outcome, it really would affect the room.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because like I don't know if like I think like 300 for Vernell Brown in that scenario, like on top of what you said for the other guys, like that might be a lot to ask. Like I don't know if we're gonna spread the ball out that much. Maybe we will, but I think
we have
I was gonna
enough
say is
cupcake games to where
yeah,
I could see him
maybe
week 1 and week 2. He could easily have a couple big plays in week 1 or week 2
maybe
that give him 100 yards or so, and then.
yeah.
You're going to have the games against Mississippi State and Kentucky where he could combine for like 100 yards in those games. And then again, it's like, I don't think that's too crazy.
That's fair. But, and all I was going to say is I think that kind of still strengthens your overall point that like, as much as we like these young guys, the whole kind of plan at receiver hinges on the fact that Sturdivant can be, if not your leading receiver, like a DK type reliable target, like guy you can go to on critical downs.
Mm-hmm. All right. I guess we'll go to your defensive negative.
Yeah. So I know you said you didn't want to do injuries for the offense, and I understand that. But to be honest with you, like I'm pretty high on this defense. Like I think even when we kind of hone in on the area where we don't feel great, the other defensive tackle spot opposite Caleb Banks, like I still think that could be a kind of deficient area, and I don't think it would cripple the defense. So it doesn't really concern me to a major extent. But where I'm at here is what would happen if, and I'm not going to even say specifically a player or a specific position, but just say Florida suffers one significant injury along the offensive line and one along the secondary. And by significant injury, I'll say out for more than a month. Like, do you think that's something that the defense can survive?
You said one on the defensive line and one in the secondary, right?
One in the secondary, yeah. And it could be a safety, could be a corner, could be an F, could be a D tackle. Like it just given, like, I guess it's kind of interesting to me. I'm curious, like, where you think even among those groups, it would be more devastating.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like Caleb Banks, then you're probably I don't think they're going to survive well because you're already very limited on the interior of that defensive line. Yeah. You're having to play one of the two freshmen in a lot of minutes, or you're moving Cameron James over the defensive tackle from F. I mean, maybe Brandon Bett is better than we expect him to be, but like he's not going to be Caleb Banks for sure. You're going to lose that high upside on that front seven that really allows your defensive backs to maybe be a weakness. Because if you're getting pressure, your corners and safeties aren't going to have to cover as long. I mean, if it's a loss in the safe, if it's a loss in that defensive back room, I mean, Devin Moore's probably going to get hurt at some point. Like, it feels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more of a when that I don't want it to be an when, but more I want it to be an if. But like, if we're being real here, I'm trying to figure out what he's saying here. Due to an undisclosed reason.
I know what he's saying. Yeah.
For your hypothetical, okay. Well, I mean, if it's like that first month of the year, I think against LSU, I don't think LSU is going to be too good in the front seven. I guess it kind of depends when. Like, if it's in that the last like month of the season, when you're playing Ole Miss, who not going to be the best offensive line in the country, and then Tennessee, you're probably more talented, and you're more talented than to still beat them, and you're probably going to be FSU. Maybe then, but if it happens early on, it just depends who it is, I guess. If it's Banks, I think you're probably toast unless it's like that last couple of games.
Yeah. I think in the secondary, I'm not sure there's like a single player in the secondary that I'm like, if that guy's gone, it's game over in the same way like it is with Caleb Banks, because he just is so disruptive for a guy who plays on the interior. Just a real,
you also have more talent, I think, as backups. I mean, if Moore gets hurt, say it's Dijon and Devin Moore starting, then you're probably promoting like Cormani, who's a former 5-star, or you're promoting Jameer Grimesley, who was a pretty high 4-star, or you're promoting the freshman Ben Hanks, who was close to a 5-star. So I think if it's a corner, and even the safeties, the big thing, if like safety gets injured, you only have like 5 safeties, and you probably want one of them to you probably only have like 4 safeties with the 2 freshmen and Thornton and Castell. Maybe Josiah Davis is a safety. Maybe you have one of your corners or a nickel who can move because they do like positional flexibility. But like, I don't think anyone is good enough in the secondary besides maybe Devin Moore to be like a major downgrade.
Yeah. Well, and the main reason I posed this hypothetical was just to kind of analyze the depth in the secondary or on defense, because I feel pretty good about the starting 11 on defense. Like even with questions about a couple like positions here and there, I think overall it's pretty strong. But obviously I think I guess my takeaway would be I agree. I think there's probably more talent backing up in the secondary. I think maybe there's a little bit more experience along the defensive line in terms of depth, but that doesn't necessarily mean as high level talent. And I'll just say I excluded the linebacker group from this hypothetical because I think the linebacker group is the one area that probably could sustain a serious injury and be all right. I think there's enough depth there that you probably could make it work.
I think the interesting thing about the linebacker group is you have a position battle. Like the corners might be a position battle between Dijon, Cormani, Grimesley, Ben Hanks. But the linebacker position, it's those are unproven guys. But the linebacker position, I'm pretty confident Pup Howard starting. Within that second linebacker, isn't going to be Jaden Robinson, who's played a good bit over his first 2 seasons? Or is it the more talented Miles Graham, who hasn't played as much, but he showed a lot of flashes last year. He's high athleticism. So I think if someone getting injured, it's you're getting a guy who you probably would have been okay with starting anyways. I mean, I'm thinking it's going to be Miles Graham who starts, but if you're putting Jaden Robinson in there, it's he was 5th on the team in tackles last year. This isn't no bad linebacker. It's funny, Jaden Robinson, if you're putting Jaden Robinson next to Ventrell Miller back when the defense was really, really bad, you're probably improving that linebacker room tenfold. I mean, it would have been a lot better. So, yeah, I think the linebacker room could withstand an injury. I mean, when if you're getting past one injury, that's just unlucky. I mean,
that's why I kept it to 1, because beyond that, one injury in a position group can happen, if not is gonna happen over the course of a season. Obviously if you just get the crazy injury bug, there's nothing you can do about that. But I think part of roster building is being able to sustain a major injury within a position group.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go to my positive hypothetical. I think this is a real interesting one. We've talked about this player maybe more than any other player on the defense since we started doing these shows, going back to our post game shows. What if Jordan Castell is like an all SEC safety? And I mean, it sounds crazy with how much we've dissed him, but he's a 2-year veteran, starting veteran. If you remember last year, he didn't play much of the fall camp because he had a really bad shoulder injury. So he was playing like the first half of the season with that shoulder injury. I mean, you go back to his freshman year, where early on, before he like started getting roughed up by SEC play, he played like a all freshman SEC safety his like first 3 games of the season. And then you get to that Kentucky game and past that where, he just got too physical for him. And then last year has that injury early on, is getting beat by DBs. His tackling maybe isn't the best. But then, like at the end of the year in the Ole Miss game, the LSU game, and Tulane and FSU, he started playing better. I mean, especially the Tulane game. He played fantastic against Tulane. I mean, now Ty Thompson, not a really good QB at all, but he was playing better, more physical. So what if Castell, former 4-star, has the 6'3" height, has good speed on him. He has the intangibles to be a NFL safety. So what if he takes that jump? What if he's healthy? And now you're talking about, okay, you have Devin Moore at corner, who we know when he's playing is a potential one of the best corners in the country. And then you have Jordan Castell in the at safety, who, again, maybe is an all SEC player. You're probably feeling a lot better about this DB unit than if Castell was just an average starter. And I mean, you're still worrying about the Devin Moore injury, and Thornton is solid, but not great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, we've given Castell a lot of grief, but like if he's an all SEC caliber player, I mean, to me, like, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic in saying that could take the defense from like good to great, because like, again, as much as we focused on like the other defensive tackle spot, and like, I think like the safety group, the fact that you don't feel great, I think, about either safety spot is a little bit concerning to me. But if you're putting an all SEC player at the back end of that secondary, like all of a sudden this defensive unit, like really does not have any glaring holes.
No.
And I think that would help obviously withstand, like, because, if you're not getting great safety play and all of a sudden you do have to deal with like a Devin Moore injury, all of a sudden the secondary becomes like a serious concern. But if you've got, an elite Jordan Castell back there, I think that changes that dynamic quite a bit. So that to me would be like, that would be as huge as like, Jamari Lyons becoming great, becoming like a Cam Jackson level player. Like that would be as impactful to me, honestly.
I mean, yeah, it absolutely would. I just had something I was going to say, but I just completely lost it about Castell.
Did it have anything to do with how mean we've been to him on a regular basis?
I messaged, it's funny, guys. I messaged him last week or earlier this week about Castell, because apparently he's been playing pretty well in spring practice, or he's been looking good in OTAs and played well in spring practice. So I said it would be so funny if he took a major step and ended up being a really good safety, how much we would have to like bite our tongues from last year. But that would be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to see it, because ultimately, if you're not getting good safety play from him and Thornton, like you're kind of looking at like, maybe Caraway can play safety, or like you're looking at true freshmen at that point. Like it's not a ton of depth in that area. So